What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Door podcast with the one and only Jeremy Hiltz and Brandon Brown. Excited to be back at it. Thanks for tuning back in with us and, always supporting the grind and the conversation and, what we feel is like important conversation, important work. And hope that you enjoy this episode and previous episodes and the future ones as well. Today, we're going to talk about something that Jeremy and I have been, tossing around, and I think it's something that everybody thinks about, but I don't think it's something that we really talk about enough, and it's the idea of, loyalty and how different, as you evolve through the system, the importance of loyalty and kind of the guidelines of what being a loyal person means, and especially, as we transition home, the importance of shedding some of that institutional loyalty that we feel in a system that's really designed as like us versus them. And I think just to start this episode off, Jeremy and I were talking about this, and it really brought up for me a good friend of mine in the Maine State Prison. This is a conversation we used to have a lot, actually, to the point that, a handful of years ago before I transitioned home, we actually designed a whole class, my good friend Charlie and I, about the idea of the Code of the Warrior. And, the short version of the story is that there was a book that was written for Marines going through the academy by a woman named Shannon French. And the title of the book is The Code of the Warrior. And the purpose of the book is to kind of discuss different warrior cultures throughout time. And, specifically the ideas of like honor, duty, and respect and loyalty, and to talk about how those concepts have evolved over time. And one of the things we talked about in the prison during this class is how those codes translate into the prison culture and the prison environment, and how misguided we can be inside of, a prison or a carceral setting with the people and the things that we feel loyal to. And I know, Jeremy, for you, this is a conversation that we've had, I think, probably the whole time we've known each other, just in, in bits and pieces here and there, about how hard it is to shed like a superficial version of loyalty that we feel like we hold to people because we did time with them. And so, I'll kind of throw it over to you to kind of start off the discussion about what does this idea of loyalty mean to you, specifically when you were inside of the system and also transitioning out. You've been home for quite a while now, but it's still a reoccurring theme for you.
Yeah, it's a difficult in a lot of ways to come out and see how society is different and what that looks like or feels like in the everyday community, right? And I'll say that because we put expectations on people sometimes, right, that don't have the same ideal or the same that same sense that hasn't been built into them like it's been built into us. Whether it's healthy or unhealthy, it's still a part of who we are sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about, though, is like I can remember when before I went to prison, there was lots of times when I just felt like I was trying to, you know what I mean, like fit into a world, right? I was like fitting in or trying to, right? Like I was like, struggling youth, right? But then you get into the system, and I was like, oh, I found my people. These are my boys. These are the guys that, because you can't leave each other because you're incarcerated, right? Like, so like, it felt like people that were always gonna have our back and always be there for us and all these things, right? And that's what I sort of bought into, right? And that definition of loyalty in the prison system is different, right? Because it's like, when I stake that, like I'm saying, there was times, especially when I was younger, that like I'm willing to like get violent for you if something goes down. I'm willing to do things for you that I'm not like it becomes a whole totally different scenario. And then when I come home, it's like, we start expecting other people in our lives to do the same things that other, like these people that were in this unhealthy situation with us would do for us, right? And so that's where I've got conflicted in the past. It's like my like I would typically say in relations, like I would do this for you.
Yeah.
That would be a common thing that I would say. Why you treat me like this? I would do anything for you.
Yeah.
Right. And just thinking about how many times I've said something like that and like breaking that down is super unhealthy because it's like, man, I'm not like when I say that, I say like I would risk my freedom for you. I'll throw away my life for you. And it's like, why on earth would I do that for anybody? You know what I'm saying? Like, why on earth would I put myself at so much risk?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because like hearing you talk about it now and thinking about our previous conversations and just even my experience in prison, it's like, and I don't think this is only unique to the carceral setting. I think it is something that is, it happens out here. It happens in relationships, and it can happen in different settings. But specifically in the prison setting, like it's a toxic loyalty, right? And it's like, it's an interesting thing to think about because like you said, I would be willing to throw away a lot of my freedoms, a lot of my privileges, a lot of my comfort to be loyal to somebody who actually doesn't even care about my freedoms and my comforts and my, the things that are important to me. And that expectation of loyalty becomes something that actually gets you while you're incarcerated in a lot of really tough situations. And the loyalty can be based on superficial things that we attach meaning to because of the setting that we're in. And so like whether it's, a race thing or a gang thing or where you're from, like we would see segmented groups, like people from Portland would be loyal to each other and people from Lewiston would be loyal to each other. And I could be friends with somebody from Lewiston, but if like the Portland crew had an issue, I'm expected to throw away my friendships and risk getting in trouble to be loyal. But it's not actually based in anything. And then you come home, and one of the really important points that you made is now you're invested in personal relationships and you expect that same loyalty. And people will raise boundaries about like, I'm not going to throw away my health and my well-being to be loyal to you because you expect it of me. And it's like something that's really hard to process, right? Like you said, man, I would do anything for you. And the sad part is a lot of times it's true.
Yeah, for sure. It is true. And I think for me, I made, based on that false belief system that I had, I made decisions to get into relationships or like from that unhealthy place, from that unhealthy loyalty, thinking that they had the same type of thing for me, you know what I'm saying? Or like they understood that, and when I said that, I was like really real about it. And I was like, oh, we'll do. But like it also translated into other areas of my life because like I can remember when I got out of college and I was going through the licensing process and the first place that I worked, like I did an internship and then I started working there. And I look back on my experience around that, I can remember thinking like, this organization, they gave me a chance when no one else would, so I staked my loyalty to that organization, right?
For better or for worse.
And what happened is I would continuously put myself, like I would try to go above and beyond to show that loyalty, like to show you that like I appreciated everything you did for me and you gave me a chance and I'm loyal to you. And what happened for me is that in the business relationships that I was working for this, but it flipped over. It was like I was actually providing a service to the organization. They weren't actually providing the service to me, right? Like I was doing them a job, right? But I was like looking at it the other way. I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything for you guys. And what happened is I felt like at the end of the day, they naturally, as a business owner, they took advantage of how much work I was going to do. I ended up working 60 hours a week, and they had these other expectations of me and then it created this thing inside me where I'm like resentful now.
Yeah.
Because
feeling trapped.
Because I become resentful. It's like, how could you take advantage of this loyalty that I have for you?
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm burnt out. I'm like angry. I'm doing this. I end up leaving angry. You know what I'm saying? I end up leaving the situation angry and resentful when I didn't have to be because I should have been able to. Well, looking back on it, if I didn't have that, like now, like if I find a job, like working is about the business relationship, right? There's not necessarily, it's a business relationship, and that's a difference. You know what I'm saying? There's well, the difference is that like there's no the expectation that like I'm tied to somebody for the rest of my life because they have been there for me in a certain situation.
Gave you an opportunity, and
Right, so that means like I'm saying the first drive, I'm like thinking I'm gonna retire here. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be here until
No matter
I'm
what
65.
happens.
Like
No matter
this
what
is my spot. Like this is my home. I mean, this is where I'm gonna be. And then during that, I sell myself short. Right?
And it transcends that into every other aspect of our lives too, because I'm hearing you talk about that business relationship in your first job, and I'm thinking about intimate relationships I've been in and a false sense of loyalty that I felt, right? Where I'm like, I can't ever give up on this person because I love them, which means I have to be loyal to them, which means no matter what they do to me,
I have to stand in
continue
there.
to stay there, because things can change, and if I don't give space for things to change, then I'm questioning who I am as a person and my
Right.
loyalty. And so it really see that like toxic culture of loyalty seeps into every aspect of our life inside and when you transition out. And, you know, I've been thinking about it lately and thinking about it more hearing you talk about your experience with, you know, the work situation. And I think about it in terms of like love and loyalty are two different things. Right. And they have some of the same principles, but they have to be two different things, and they have to coincide if we're going to be in any type of healthy relationship or dynamic. And one of the things I think about is like, you know, we would ask guys when we did this class, when the topic of loyalty came up, we would ask them like, who are you loyal to? Right? Who would you do anything for? And this was a consistent thing. We did it every time we had a group, every new group. And we would go around and people would say like, you know, if I said name the top 3 people you're loyal to, it'd be like my mom, right? My best friend, and my kid, right? And like these are 3 of the consistent themes. And you know, we would wait for everybody to go, and inevitably it would get back to us as like facilitators, and we would say, you know, nobody said myself. Right. And that's really the part that we lose in the culture of being in prison sometimes. And then it's the part that we have a horrible time adjusting to out here, because a lot of people in the world understand that if I'm not loyal to myself and my principles and my beliefs, and then I'm not capable of having a healthy relationship of any kind, because I'm going to sacrifice myself and the things that I find important to appease other people.
Well, you think about how you gain loyalty in a carceral setting is by doing something, right? Like there's an action that you have to take to prove the law. Like they can't just, you know what I mean? You don't just trust somebody for no reason, right? Like there's got to be something happened and you did something, or something was going on and you showed up in some way, right? And it was typically not necessarily the best things, and that's how. And so, like when we get out here, the people, we start trying to show them how that we're loyal to them as action
ways.
And sometimes where it could be through financial. I'm gonna give you money. I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna do this. And then when something happens, we'll go back and say, why would you do that to me? I just gave you this.
And you know what, a common thing that I've experienced, and I think other people experience too, is like when that part comes up, then the other person says, why are you throwing it in my face?
Right.
It's like, no, I'm not throwing it in your face. I'm reminding you that I've been loyal to you. And I want
we
that
really are thrown in the face, right? Because you bring it up,
but it's
right?
it's not intentional. I don't think it's misguided sometimes, right? Because we're not, I don't think we're always throwing it in somebody's face. I think we're asking, why aren't you reciprocating my loyalty when I need you, even though it's inconvenient and even though it's hurtful and even though it makes you sacrifice things that are important to you and boundaries. And so I imagine it does feel like throwing it in somebody's face, but for us, like you said, we've valued loyalty through
action,
but also through like mostly negative actions,
right?
Actions that were like,
how much are you willing to risk for the relationship?
And that's what and you know what, that's the perfect way to put it, because we put loyalty on a scale with risk. And if you're not willing to risk yourself in some way, your happiness or your value,
not willing to give something,
right? It makes us question the loyalty. And
it has to be more than the next, like a little bit more than the other person to show that loyalty there.
For sure. And I think, like, you know, for me, when I started really thinking about loyalty, I mean, to the point that, you know, like when I came home, like this Code of the Warrior class that I kind of opened up talking about was so formative and so important to me. And my friend Charlie was such an influence in my life, such a mentor for me through, you know, through my more than a decade of incarceration, that in the last, you know, year or so, I've started to get characters from the book tattooed on me to remind me that, like, I even now, 3 years out, I have to actively change the way I think and feel about things like loyalty and honor and respect and obligation, to the point that I really want to, you know, tune back into this learning experience I had learning about other cultures where the word loyalty was like, it made more sense than it does in our culture today. And I look back at the times where I was like, I had to evaluate for myself the things I was willing to do for people in prison that would put everything important to me in jeopardy. And what really the kind of the underlying thing that I think we're trying to talk about here is that if somebody truly loves you and you ask them to risk something for loyalty, the only proper response is to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And you shouldn't do that either, right? Because you're jeopardizing something positive in your life.
And I think in doing so, that's what becomes difficult, is when you say, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. What you really, and so now the risk is like losing a friendship, right? And that sometimes is what becomes super difficult for us too, is like the loss of like, the fear of like, if I say no, yeah, I'm not doing that, or like I'm not going to overextend myself, or I'm going to set these boundaries, what that's going to look like ongoing in the relationship. Is this person going to be mad at me? Are they going to do it to me? Whatever it looks like. And then that's where it's like sometimes becomes like the action becomes really more selfish, right? Because I want to get rid myself of that fear. Yeah. And I think when you talk about the code of the warrior, these types of principles are difficult because it's like you have to stand on what you believe in with yourself, right? To set that boundary, yeah, and to be like, I'm fearful of losing this relationship, but also to be able to go, you know, I might lose this. If I lose this relationship over this, then this wasn't that relationship is not nearly as valuable as I thought it was. You know what I mean? And that's like warrior shit right there, right? That's like being able to go, okay, I'm gonna protect what I have. You know what I mean?
And what's important to me, and I think that's one of the biggest issues too, is, and I think like a really easy way to describe it is how many people, especially for you running this treatment program, right, and for you having people, you're constantly interacting with people who are coming out of the system and, you know, trying to get right and trying to make that next step in their life. But how many people have you in your career seen set back because of the loyalty they feel to people who are coming out that aren't in the same?
Oh, 100%. It goes. It's like this automatic pull. Yeah. Like it's a pull. Like I can say whatever I want, but the pull is going to be there. These guys that show up for each other in ways that you wish they wouldn't. Yeah. But when you can harness this and direct it, and like, because the loyalty that's there is like genuine, right? Like it's passion. It's just misdirected, right? Yeah. And like you said, like some of it has to come inward, and then some of it has to go to different places. But when you can show that loyalty to where it's reciprocated, yeah, it's actually a very, very powerful thing. You create like very good network of people, 100%. Right? But on the other side of it, when it's misdirected and when it's directed in this way, people will literally just, like, they'll drop everything and run out, right? And one of the things that I run this, I do a men's group on Monday morning down in our residential program, and we're talking about like integrity, right? Like the importance of integrity, in like what I say and what I do is going to be the same thing, right? Like what I say in this group of people with these other men when we're getting vulnerable with each other is how I'm going to act when I leave here, right? When I say I'm going to be, like, what does that look like for people? How do we communicate with each other, right? And what that gets at, it starts to attack the negative, the loyalty that I show. We start saying to us, yeah, right, because it's like, I identify my mom and my kids and my best friend as people that I have loyalty to, But at the same time, I'm on the street corner. I'm in the prison cell. I'm doing all these things, and I'm lying to these people, and I'm showing my loyalty over there. So I'm conflicted inside myself. So I got to line this stuff up into where it belongs, right?
Because then the loyalty becomes a false sense.
Because my mom and my kids would literally fucking do anything that they would do. They are the only ones that I found that could really truly reciprocate that loyalty that I'm talking about right now. They're the only ones that could actually really, because they love me unconditionally, whether you know what I mean, no matter what happens, they are gonna love me no matter what. Not the people that were in the prison cell that, like, when they get out of prison they start getting high, or they have mental health issues, or all these things that are going on for them. They're not actually the ones that are gonna be here for us when you know what I mean. Like, if I go get sick and go to the hospital, my kids probably ain't gonna leave the hospital room. You know what I mean?
And that's what, like, the really important thing to think about when we're talking about this big conversation around loyalty. And this is probably an ongoing conversation that will weave in and out of future episodes, because it is so foundational to all of our experiences in reentry, and all of our experiences before prison, and all of our experiences in prison.
It also drives. So I made a lot of decisions when I first got out about relationships that have crashed and burned later on, and I look back and I go, why?
Yeah.
And there was some part of it that I showed an immense amount of loyalty that wasn't being reciprocated, and it was never going to be able to be reciprocated because it was like they weren't capable of it, right?
And it might
I'm trying to get somebody loyal to me that might be getting high on drugs, and like, and they expect that they're going to be able to reciprocate that is asinine, right? It's like really setting them up for failure. They put an expectation on somebody that's not capable of doing something. I'm gonna lose in that scenario, not them.
And it's the best way to put it is it's an unhealthy expectation of loyalty. And you know, the way that you just talked about it a minute ago, where like when we really establish what's important to us, and I look at it as a father with an 8-month-old daughter, the person I'm loyal to in this world the most above all else is my daughter. Right. And then I'm loyal to her mother as my partner in co-parenting. And then I'm loyal to people that I've established trust and relationships with. But all those people that I feel that real, genuine, authentic loyalty to means that I can't put myself in situations to jeopardize what I want to provide to them in my relationship with them. And so I have this other category of people that I feel loyal to. Right. And it's people that the loyalty is kind of superficial in some aspects, right? Because we struggled together. We went through shit together. We went through trauma together in the prison or before the prison or whatever. But then because I've said that my family and the people that have expressed healthy love for me are the most, like, that's who I'm most loyal to, I can't be loyal to them if I'm willing to jeopardize everything because of this other sense of loyalty I have over here. And that's one of the things that you don't actually have the opportunity to process in prison, because you're so cut off and isolated from those principled loyalties that you establish, right? So like, people are in prison and say, my mother is the most important person in the world to me. Like you said, she's held me down through anything. She's loved me regardless of every mistake I've made. But then we engage in behaviors in prison that jeopardize that because we're in a culture of toxic false loyalty, right? And so it's like, we don't even, it's not even something that can easily come to you that, oh man, I'm not actually really loyal to the people I love if I'm engaging in these behaviors in prison, because I feel like I have to engage in these behaviors for self-protection or to fit in, like you said at the beginning. And then so when we come out and we carry that with us, it's 100%. It's so hard to shake off, right? And I have so many people in my life that I care about, and they're like, oh, I got to go do A, B, and C. I'm like, why? And like, because like, that's my homie, right? Like, we were in prison together, and I got to make sure that I do whatever. And I'm like, but doing whatever is taking away from the things that I know you love.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, one of the things that I really started realizing in my life is that the moment we forget that loyalty is a two-way street, and it has to be a healthy two-way street, is the moment we stop being loyal to the things that actually matter to us.
Because this is like very important too, because I don't know how many times, how many conversations I had with guys, men and women that go, I did A, B, and C, and now I'm getting fucked over by you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're burning me again. I'm getting burned again. I'm getting burned again. I'm getting burned again. It's like, well, I also keep I also keep giving to people that don't have a way to give back, right? Whether that's financially or emotionally, right? Like, is the relationships and people that I want to give my loyalty and commitment to are going. It's got to be a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
It can't be just a one-way street, right? So the loyalty has to start with us, right? Like that's what you were saying. Like who said that they were loyal to themselves is probably not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to continue. I can't be like, loyalty is like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to trust you, right? Like all those things. And if I'm lying to myself every day about like who's around me and why they're there,
Yeah.
I'm not loyal, like you said, like I'm not loyal to myself, right? Like the loyalty to myself is gone, but I'm loyal to myself, and I know those unconditional relationships. I know the way where I can get that from. It makes it easier to set the boundaries of people that you know can't give back. You know what I mean?
And it's important too, because you talked about integrity, right? It's like these, and this is like, anytime I have these conversations, I always come back to this, because it's when, like in my life, when I really started thinking about this, I was like maybe 28, 27 years old when my buddy Charlie and I first started talking about this class, and it took us a few years to really kind of actualize and develop, and to the point where we were actually, facilitating a class and a conversation around these principles. And it really does, like, before we even get to loyalty, we have to ask ourselves, what is my integrity built on? What are my principles, right? Where is my honor, and where is my respect, right? Because that's another thing. When we would talk about respect, people would, they would say all these things about what I respect about other people, but nobody ever talked about what makes me respect myself. And once you establish those things, then you have a framework for how to stay loyal to them, right? And so one of the things that I've noticed in my personal life is, like, I've been in a lot of relationships, man, like specifically intimate relationships, but also friendships that, I really strongly have felt in my life that, I went to prison. I had a 17-year prison sentence, and there was some people who are really important to me, my family and a couple really close friends, that never gave up on me, right? And I internalized that of, like, I wouldn't have survived prison if it wasn't for those people. And because they never gave up on me, that became a quality I wanted to embody. I'm never going to give up on people. But what I forgot in the process was that the people that never gave up on me also saw that I was trying really hard to grow, and that I was committed to that, and that my principles remained intact when I was in prison, that I was going to pursue my education, that I was going to do everything I could to stay out of trouble, that I was going to continue to be dedicated to my personal growth. But I forgot that part when I came out of prison, right? And so I've been in relationships and I've been in friendships where I said, because people never gave up on me, I can't give up on this person because I love them. Mm-hmm. Even when that love is super unhealthy and it's super toxic and it's incredibly damaging to me, it's making me question things, it's making me do things that are outside of my character. And every time after something happens with a friend or with a partner, I sit by myself and I go, man, that really sucked, but I have to be loyal to that person. I can't give up on them because people didn't give up on me. And that's where my loyalty has been misguided in the past, right? Is I wasn't being loyal to myself, and I wasn't even being realistic about why loyalty mattered to me, because it depends on the other person's actions too. So if somebody's doing something that's jeopardizing my happiness, and it's jeopardizing my freedom, and it's jeopardizing my sanity, then loyalty doesn't apply anymore, right? The only loyalty that should apply is that loyalty I have to myself and my principles and, my ability to live a happy, healthy life. But like you said earlier, we fear the loss of that relationship because we haven't maintained a healthy relationship with ourselves and thought about actively what we're loyal to. And it can be anything, man.
Well, if we break it down, really what we're talking about is codependency.
100%.
Right? like we can call it whatever we want, right? But like in the prison system, we become codependent
On
in
your
a lot of ways, on the community, on this and that, right? And one of the things that prison doesn't teach us. So what I know about codependency, and just to define it, is it's seeking externally what we're lacking internally, right? What wasn't brought, like my self-esteem isn't there, right? All these things aren't present internally, right? And so my loyalty goes outward, right? Because if I do this, I feel better about myself. If I help you, I feel better about myself. If I do this, so I continuously do that. And then I get out here and get into these relationships, and we can say, like, we can name it and go, yeah, you know, I'm loyal to this person because they were there for me, and that codependency is what traps us in these bad they will trap us in the bad relationship, right?
Yeah.
And we say, like what you just said was, you know, I've done all this stuff and we're there. You've been there for me this whole time, so I'm with you, right, for forever, and I can't leave, and like you can continue to do whatever you want to me, right? And I'm gonna stick by you because you were loyal to me during this time of my life, right?
Or just because I feel a sense of loyalty to you, because I feel emotional about you.
But at the end of the day, that's like codependency. It is. That's the we get addicted to codependency. There's a physiological change that happens in our bodies when this stuff is going on too, especially in the relationships, right? But we put this label on it of this loyalty, this, you know, when we talk about this unhealthy expectations, it's really because I'm trying to fill myself up with something
that's not there.
That nothing can, like in people that are healthy will not allow me to attach to them that way. You know what I'm saying? No, they will not allow me to give them that loyalty. They will set the boundary with me before. They will say, no, you can't do that for me.
Absolutely.
You can't pay for this. You can't do this. I'm not going to ask you for help every time. You know what I mean?
You can't sacrifice your health and your well-being to show up.
But if I'm surrounded by people that will do that,
yeah,
it's because they're unhealthy. They're in a way that we're taking advantage of each other's codependency, and we just and we think, and we look at it and go, I feel good because I'm helping. I feel good from this. It happens a lot in the recovery community in a lot of ways. Right? I see people get out, and they get into 12-step meetings, and they do a lot of the recovery community stuff, and they get the dependency starts to happen with the community and speaking and going up on the stage and talking and doing all these things, and then you see this same unhealthy loyalty happening when in our recovery community when you don't see if it's not checked in the right way, right?
100%.
It's so easy to get into those cycles and those patterns, and it's like I said, the codependency was almost rewarded in the system. You know what I mean? It was rewarded by you take this negative action. I take the negative action because I don't want to feel the fear, and I want to feel good about myself, and I want to fill up the internal piece. That's why I'm taking the negative action. They're using me to do it, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like rewarded by calling it loyalty. It's rewarded by calling it, this is the way, this is you're a stand-up dude if you're doing these things. So we actually get rewarded for that behavior, and then we get out here and it's not healthy. No one's going to reward us for this behavior. It's actually, we're going to get arrested for this behavior.
It's rewarded because of the twisted value system that exists in the prison. Right? We reward people through reputation, because if you're willing to go all the way to 100 super fast, that becomes a thing that people fear and expect.
Like, so like that's what it is.
And then we have to come out here and realize that like nobody wants to be around that.
No one wants to be around.
Nobody wants to be around that every time he feels harmed.
He gets angry and flies off the handle.
Yeah. And so that's 100% true. Is it's like this misguided value system that exists inside of like carceral spaces and exists inside of communities of struggle, no matter where you're at, right? Because if you're struggling and you'll do whatever it takes for the person next to you and yourself to get out of the struggle, regardless of how shitty or illegal or whatever the case may be. People look at it like, but you did it, and it's like almost you did it because you cared. It's like it was a misguided way of caring, and then we carry that into our relationships because we view, like, I've viewed in relationships before that ability for my partner to fly off the handle is like, oh, they wouldn't do that if they didn't care, right? And so I have to be like, oh, that they love me, they care about me because they're treating me like shit because they're upset, which means I just got to do better. I got to be more loyal. I got to show up even more. I got to give more of myself. I got to give more of my resources, more of my love even when it starts taking away from the people that would never treat you.
It'll suck the life right out of you.
It does suck the life out of you. And,
And you get overwhelmed, and we start going, wow, I can't make it out here
100%.
because people don't understand me and all this stuff. And it's like, really, at the end of the day, we don't understand ourselves. That's why we can't make it out here. You know what I mean?
And what I've realized, honestly, in this conversation, well, first, I've realized two things hearing you speak just now. And one of the things I realized, I literally just had like an epiphany about myself, bro. It's wild. Because,
About time.
yeah, I know. It's been a long time. But one of the things I realized is when you said codependency is us trying to fill a void with somebody else, that a void within ourselves with somebody else, I literally just like so much of my time in prison made sense to me because, when I was in the prison, I go anywhere in the prison and there's 200, 300 guys I dap up and say, I love you too. You know what I'm saying? And it's that type of love that I'm like, we're in the struggle together and I respect you and I see you, you know what I mean? I see you for all the positive and the negatives and I still love you despite, right? And when I came home to a really healthy community of people that, in the places that I go, I see 100 people I can dap up and say, I love you. But what I didn't have in prison was any type of intimacy. And we've talked about this in the past, about how damaging that has been. And so when I come out here, my codependency rests on the fact that I've been trying to fill a void that was active for 13 years of my life, which was this feeling of like, I'm never going to be good enough for a woman because of the fact that I was in prison and the fact that I sat in my cell just wishing that somebody would love me in an intimate way. And now I come out here and I seek it. But the problem, like real, genuine, authentic connection and love can't come through seeking it. It has to come natural, right? And so that codependency thing is something that, hearing you talk, I literally just realized is like, I can see the cycle of the behaviors I engage in relationships is 100% to fill a void that I'm super afraid of because it was so present through my entire incarceration. I don't ever want to feel that void again. But maybe the healthiest thing for me to do to be back to loyalty, to be loyal to myself and what I want in my life, is to embrace the void until an authentic.
Well, that's the warrior shit, right? That's because you're stepping into it, right? You lean into it. That's the stuff that's painful, right? Like, why can't I be alone for a little while? Why do I have to give myself to so many other people?
Yeah.
Why do I?
Or
right?
even
Like,
one
so
unhealthy
and to be honest, it's like, it's just like anything else. It's like scarier to think about it than it is to actually do the work. Because once you start doing the work, you start feeling better. You start going, man, holy shit, I don't actually. I mean, to be honest, I was having a conversation with a guy he did most of his life incarcerated. He's been out for 2-3 years now, and he's like doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to me about like the reason he hangs out with one other person that's like unhealthy and like buys him a lot of things, takes him places, and doing all that stuff. And one of the things I realized is that like the reason he does that. It's because he hasn't given himself permission. Because he's going fishing, he's going on these little trips and stuff like that. Well, he's never actually done that on his own.
Yeah,
he needed permission to go. I said, dude, what? So if you are uncomfortable with this, then why don't you just go on your own? It's a lake in Maine. Like, you don't actually need permission. You don't need somebody to hold your hand to do that. You could actually go out there on your own
because it's scary.
And it's like literally changed because now he's got a kayak strapped to his car. And then the other day he came to me. He said, man, I appreciate you saying that because I thought I always had to have somebody do that with me. You know what I mean? And him coming out of the system, it's like that just opened up a door for him that he's not going to be able. And he doesn't have to. And that's showing the loyalty to himself and working through like that void that we were just talking about. He's like, it was uncomfortable at first, but it actually makes me, those are the type of things that are going to make us feel better, right?
Because isolation is super scary when you've been through a significant period of incarceration because there was nothing there. Well, I'm not going to say there was nothing because I did a lot of growth in isolation in my cell, looking in the mirror, being really critical with myself, right? But then you come out into the world and the thing that you fear the most is the isolation, because it's reminiscent of incarceration. And so sitting in your living room or even going on a hike by yourself feels like you're back in your prison cell in a lot of ways. And even when your prison cell was the place that you grew and the place that you figured it out and you survived it, that doesn't mean you ever want to be back in it.
And it's almost like we only go back into those places when we're feeling like isolation, when I'm feeling the worst, that's when I want to go into the cell.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's when I want to isolate the most, right? And it's like, where are those, like, and you're speaking about loyalty. When I'm feeling that way, I isolate and retreat. Where are all those people that we said were loyal? Like, where they don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like we're by ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But that's because that loyalty isn't really real. When now, the people in my life, when I'm feeling that way, I go to them.
Yeah.
I'll call my mom on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Ma, this is what's going on. Instead of retreating, I show my loyalty because that has to go both ways, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think, I think that's the most important thing that hopefully is coming out of this conversation. And I think maybe it's even a thread we follow in a future episode, another conversation. And this was the second point I was going to make that became really clear to me in this conversation, is that if loyalty is going to be true and it's going to be healthy and productive in your life, what the loyalty should be founded on, above all else, is what the other person wants for you. I should be loyal to people in my life who I know, without any doubt, want to see me thrive, want to see me succeed, want to see me happy. That's where I should direct my loyalty and my energy to, because the moment that I take away from those people and I start directing that false sense of loyalty to people that they actually don't care what happens to me. They want to succeed. They want to thrive. They want to be happy, and they're willing to take my loyalty to facilitate those things for themselves with no actual care about how it makes me feel to offer that loyalty with nothing in return. Because we talked about being realistic about what we are expecting back, right? The fact of the matter is, the people that want to see me happy and the people that want to see me thriving and succeeding in the world don't expect anything back. What I offer to them is because I also want the same for them, right? So I show up for their happiness because they've showed up for mine. And so what I'm realizing in this conversation, and I see it in our community every single day, is that too many people attach the loyalty to somebody who actually doesn't care what happens to them, right? And it's, like I said, I've been through this in relationships and friendships and business relationships too, where I'm attaching my loyalty to somebody that gave me an opportunity, but they're abusing my time and they're not compensating me adequately for what I'm giving them in a business relationship, right? I've had friendships where you could call me at 2:00 in the morning because I'm going to show up because I care about your happiness. But if I called you at 2:00 in the afternoon on a day off, you wouldn't show up for me because you don't care about my happiness. And so it's not like, sometimes we attach, so I have to be loyal 100% of the time to 100% of my capabilities. But that's not real loyalty, right? I have to be loyal to somebody because I care about them and I want them to be happy in a way that also allows me to continue to be happy. And so I think that's the thing that I really realize is, like, where we should direct our loyalty towards should be based on what somebody wants for you. If they want you to be happy, then you should think about how you can be loyal to them. And if they're proving that they want you to be happy through little gestures and words and the simple things in life, then that's how you know. Because it's actually a lot harder to show up in simple ways than it is sometimes to wake up at 2 a.m. and go save somebody 3 hours away who put themselves in a shitty situation, right? Sometimes it's harder to just listen to somebody who's having a hard time and just be there and be present than it is to actually do an action that feels good for you, because I feel like, oh, I'm showing it in ways that were valuable in prison, right? Like showing up and jeopardizing myself for this person. I don't know, man. It's an interesting conversation. I think there's a lot more to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is like I think it's natural thing, the loyalty piece, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not necessarily sure if I can base my loyalty on, wondering what somebody wants for me, right?
Mm.
I think it's really like what is in that relationship. Is there any like questions that are going on, right? Is there any like, do I question what's happening with something? What is this going on, right? That's where it starts going. Is this person lying to me, right? Have they been dishonest? Because loyalty to me has changed in a lot of ways. It's like I don't like, loyalty to me is like, you're not gonna talk shit about me when I'm not in the room, right? Like there's gonna be things that like you're not gonna like try to hurt me in any way, right?
To fit in,
To fit into what's going on, and I think
to be comfortable.
I think that's like a part of the biggest thing is like there's somebody's like conversation change. You know what I mean? Like if I'm changing conversation based on who I'm around,
Yeah.
different. You know what I mean? Like it's a question. Like why would you do that? Like why is the conversation changed now? You know what I mean? And it's like if that's going on, like I already know that like that's just not like my values, what I talk about has and who I'm engaging. So if there's ever a time when I'm like I'm associating with people or I'm having a conversation with people and that and the conversation is against my values.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself like, cause it's been in the past, like I don't really agree with that as a person, but I'm like in a conversation with somebody about it, or I know what they represent, and I'm like hanging out with them anyway, right?
Placating them.
And it's like what, and that's where I'm like that. My loyalty, like coming back to it to myself, isn't real. You know what I mean? Because I'm participating in conversations that I don't believe in. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, it does.
And so like why? So now I know if I have to do that to be around you, that my loyalty isn't coming to you. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to stay loyal because you're not going to be loyal to me because our values don't line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's the thing that makes a relationship really special is when you can have two completely different points of view about something, but make space for each other to grow in your points of view by learning and conversating with the other person about it. And that's how kind of that loyalty is established, where you can
opinions and values are different.
No,
right?
100%.
Like I'm like there's something like racism, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if I know somebody's racist, but I'm hanging out with them anyway.
Yeah.
And that's not who I am as a person.
Sure.
My loyalty isn't going there, right? If somebody is like behaving in a certain way, like I'm not gonna participate, and I'm like find myself like, you know what I mean, like you know what I mean, associated hanging out just because of some other thing, and my loyalty can't be there. You know what I mean? I have to be true to myself. Is what I'm trying to say.
No, 100%.
The people that I surround myself with, they have to have my same values. You know what I mean? They have to. You know what I mean? It's like they have to. It's not necessarily like I'm gonna do a background check, but like at the same time, it's like. You can tell, you know what I mean, like where you want to put your loyalty to.
But it has to go deeper than that too, and maybe this is what we talk about in the next or a future episode. Is like once you have a community of people whose values align, that shouldn't mean that you give them all your loyalty because it's got to go a little bit deeper than even that. But at least you now gauge, like you said, I'm surrounding myself with people with similar values and similar principles. And then the strength of the relationship depends on will dictate the strength of the loyalty that I show them, right? And I think that's kind of where I was meaning is like, if I've got two people that I feel loyal to just like internally, right? And one of them is like one of my homies from the prison who's out here and still kind of living a life of crime, but he's a good dude and I got a lot of love for him and we had vulnerable conversations and we grew together in prison and I know that he's got a good heart. And then I have a family member who I know only wants the best for me. And I have that same type of love with them and that same type of respect. And if this person that I was in prison with is like, yo, I need a ride to go cop a brick, right? My false sense of loyalty from the prison would be like, I got to show up for that because you're my man, right? And we've been through shit. But that person's willing to jeopardize what's important to me so they don't actually care about what happens to me, right? And they also, coming back to the self-loyalty, they don't care about what happens to themselves either. Their principles have become misguided, right? What they're striving for is misguided. And so now, like you're saying, our values have become unaligned. So that's when I have to be critical about our values are unaligned. So this is not where I have to give my loyalty because you living that lifestyle is against my value of the lifestyle that I'm trying to live. And then
I think we're just in just saying that, right? Like it's like if somebody's selling drugs, like selling fentanyl or whatever it is, I literally have no respect for that.
Yeah.
None at all. Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't care. Like what that looks like. Like I don't care. Like so, I'm not gonna. Right there alone, I know my loyalty isn't gonna be to you because I know for like most of the time, You know, just put it in those terms, right? Like if you get caught with that fucking those drugs, who the fuck you telling them? Because I haven't seen like the loyalty's different now than it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Just in that sense, right? And then, like if I'm living a different lifestyle, my values are not like, so I know that, so I can't associate showing any kind of loyalty to somebody that's doing something that I can't stand.
And that's where love and loyalty have to be different, because I can show love to that person, right? And especially like in the work.
I personally can't show love. To
No, but I
people
mean,
that's it's like there's no love there.
But when I think by showing love, I'm thinking about even what we do professionally. I can show love to that person to say, hey, you can do better. And when you're ready to do better, you know what I'm saying? When your values evolve a little bit, I make space for you. That's love. That's an act of love. And like we talk about honesty too, right? Is a huge part of loyalty. And the ability to be honest with that person is an act of loyalty. Even when you're saying like,
I believe that
you're fucking up, dude.
But I just it's like so based on what I was saying. It's like, is that person capable? Like if you're selling drugs, are you capable of showing me the same loyalty that I can show you? And the answer is no.
And that's where,
because that's why I can't, like there's no loyalty there, because it can't be reciprocated. Like the other person in that moment cannot reciprocate the same type of loyalty that I have, that I can show them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that's really what this episode is boiling down to for me. You know, as we wrap it up, what I think is that what you just said really perfectly captures that loyalty to self and that establishing our values and our principles piece, right? Because once we do that, because what I see is too many people come home and they haven't established those principles and values and that self-loyalty, and that's why the loyalty becomes so easily misguided towards somebody that like their value system is different than what mine is, but I'm going to reduce mine because I'm not standing strong in it. And for me, I've experienced that in relationships.
Not well to do that,
you know, and that's the evolution that has to happen. And I hope, you know,
it was just say this has been a long, painful process to get to where we're at right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a good one.
And I hope anybody listening can kind of have that internal critical reflection about some of the things we're talking about. And I have a feeling we'll probably talk about it again, because I feel like there's so much still left to unpack. But you know, think about that. Who do you give your loyalties to, and how loyal to yourself and your values and your principles are you in those moments where loyalty will jeopardize what you stand on as an individual? And as always, we just thank you everybody for listening in, and encourage you to tune in and keep listening, subscribe, follow us on social media, tell somebody about it if you heard something in this conversation that was meaningful to you, and we'll be back, next episode. Thank you.